Welcome to Spaces Between, a podcast about bringing gamers closer together. I'm your host, Roy Candy, and with me today is Colby Dauch of Plaid Hat fame. What's going on, man?
That's me. You know, doing the things, staying indoors.
The legendary HeroScapers.com, you know. Pushing around plastic dudes, rolling some dice. That's how you do.
That's how we do it.
Nice. The good old days of HeroScape, right?
I look on them fondly. It's where I found my people.
I really want to have a live play of HeroScape soon with Tom on one of the shows. That would be really awesome.
You better invite me.
Come on down, let's do this.
I'll do it.
Nice.
Don't tempt me. I'm
pretty sure you'd probably wreck us with all your vast knowledge. Well,
I don't know about that. I'm not like a min-max Uber gamer.
You're more like the fun kind of gamer?
Yeah. Yeah, I usually pick an army because it looks fun together and stuff like that.
That's awesome. So, for anybody who doesn't know, Plaid Hat is a company that makes all sorts of awesome games. Summoner Wars, Spectre Ops, all those sorts of awesome games. Not any other games we're going to mention. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh, we can mention those. We still made those. I mean, we're best known for, of course, Dead of Winter, Mice and Mystics, Stuffed Fables.
Yes, for sure. Lots of awesome games.
We're best known for those because those are our best sellers. So all of those stayed with Asmodee.
But yeah, I feel like a lot of people... I know a lot of people might know sort of like your history as far as this stuff goes, because I know you've talked about it on several other things. But yeah, how are things going for you, man?
Excellent. I mean, I'm excited.
Mm-hmm.
I'm nervous, but excited.
Oh, for sure.
Mostly. Yeah, it's a big challenge ahead. There's a lot to do, but it feels good to be able to kind of be back out there, mixing it up with people, being a little bit more open, because, of course, you have a greater level of control. So, you know, not worried about anybody being upset about, something I said, or not being able to follow through on something I said, because the buck didn't really stop with me where that was concerned. I couldn't, make everything that I would necessarily want to happen. So we'd be able to talk about it early and all that fun stuff that we used to do back in the day.
It's crazy because I first learned about Plaid Hat by listening to you guys' podcast forever ago. And you guys would go into all sorts of details about game design and things you were currently doing with the games. And I actually heard you guys are going to start spinning back up the podcast and start doing more content for that sort of stuff.
Yeah, the first episode is in the can.
Is there any sort of release date for that? Because I was searching on my phone. I'm like, I don't see it. Where's it at?
We just got the newly recorded, revised, but definitely sing-alongable and memorable Alex eating theme.
Oh, snap.
So we changed a couple of lines in there, but for the most part, you'll be able to sing along. Still got some uke in it, but it's been, produced. It had me grinning. I think people will really enjoy it.
Yeah, I know you guys have had state moves and different people on the team, all sorts of mix-ups.
Yep. So we had to change up the podcast. It's still Summoner Wars and Dungeon Run because we thought that would be fun. We kept that line, especially since it's early.
Hey, are you guys going to actually release Dungeon Run 2 now?
I mean, hey, everything's on the table now.
Oh, man.
I can't make any promises because last time I talked about Dungeon Run 2, people still haunt me to this day about it.
That's hilarious because, it was like forever. Just the podcast episode.
Dungeon Run 2 would be Dungeon Run 2nd Edition. I think we'd be shooting ourselves in the foot to make it Dungeon Run 2.
Oh, for sure. That's awesome, though. It's really cool to be able to see you guys get to go back to be, true to form and do more, passion project type stuff, because I feel like when you guys were in the whole corporate situation, you were stuck with being gotta make timelines, gotta make this thing happen.
we're still passionate. Asmodee didn't reach his hand into like the creative stuff, so we were still doing our passion projects.
Gotcha.
But the only thing that it could have affected is like, there's people expecting a game to come out. There's quarterly financials waiting on it, so we'll be able to, move at our own pace. A game still has to come out because eventually we have to be able to feed ourselves. So, we eventually have to see a return on the investment of all the hours we put into something, but we do have a little more leniency on when something comes out.
Yeah, and I'm sure you'll be able to pursue certain product lines to be able to create at your leisure. Like if it's like, okay, well, this is a game we want to make, you have those choices instead of just having to look at the numbers behind each thing, right?
Yeah, I mean, we're still obviously number conscious because you have to be to have a successful business. But the only one I need to convince is myself that something's going to work. So yeah, we can do, like I hadn't planned to do a Summoner Wars second edition, and it's not because anybody told me not to. It's because I couldn't really justify it. Like Crystal Clans did not sell well enough. Guardians did not sell well enough to be like, hey, we're going to do another 2-player competitive card game. To sell that up the line wasn't something I was prepared to do. But going independent, it's like, man, it would really be, nice and circular to swing back to a Summoner Wars second edition at kind of this momentous moment we're restarting. It was the game we started with. So yeah, it has let me make some decisions like that.
I think it's crazy because like when we first saw the announcement, me and Tom immediately were both like, what? Summoner Wars second edition, like let's do this. And I'm really excited to hear, because I mean I was a huge fan of Summoner Wars when I got out of Magic the Gathering that I've been playing for a long time. When I sold off a bunch of my cards, like Summoner Wars was one of the first things I bought with that Magic card credit, and I've really enjoyed playing the game, so it'd be really cool to see more content for a Summoner Wars style game.
Yeah, I had kind of felt like, well, Summoner Wars just faded into nothing. Nobody cares about it anymore. But when I made that post and in it had said I was revisiting Summoner Wars for a second edition, man, I've had a lot of people telling me about how excited they are for a second edition, and people just coming out of the woodwork talking about Summoner Wars. So that has me really excited. Because once I started fiddling with it, I started to get real excited for the game design. So the fact that other people are excited it's a game that I feel like you can just keep bringing back to the table, and you can be as serious about it as you want. I really enjoyed the fact that you could just have decks that you could just throw on the table and these pre-built decks that you can play against each other, or you can play mix it up and add a little bit of neutral units in there or some different units and stuff like that. It made it definitely interesting to play at all sorts of different levels. I just got Did it lag out? I just got from Nikki on our group chat that we have at the office in the podcast feed. She just got Alex's new theme song back.
And she's flipping out.
She says, I'm not sure why this theme song made me tear up, but it sure did.
Aww. That's awesome. But yeah, I remember I used to listen back before I ever did any board game media or anything like that. I played the theme song, and Alex had it in one of the episodes forever ago, and it was just kind of funny that he was throwing in a couple of those fan renditions. Yeah, of the song.
You did a electric guitar version, right?
Yeah, a long time ago. It's terrible. But it was fun. But yeah. I remember sending in some questions and back in the day, oh my goodness, they read my question on the podcast. It just seems so strange, where I am now and where you guys are. It's just pretty funny.
Yeah. Good times.
So what are you most excited about now going off on your own and starting to do Plaid Hat from here?
I mean, just being able to, like I've been packing, replacement part orders and writing little handwritten notes as I do. I've been going on podcasts again. And just in general reconnecting with people, and that has been super exciting to do. So I guess that just being able to have that kind of independent spirit come back and have that personal touch has been really rewarding for me.
That's awesome. Do you think going forward, because I know when you were in the corporate setting, you had to be very hush-hush about a lot of your stuff, but from now on, are you guys going to be more open and trying to like share what you guys are doing?
Yeah, the story that I kind of tell to illustrate this is that when we put out the podcast after being acquired, we had gotten some pushback on it, and recognize that like, we can't be as open as we were. We're under a bigger structure, and there are obviously confidentiality rules. And then so we decided like, okay, well, just in order to be putting something out there, we'll like scale it back and just do some like role-playing games, so we're not even getting into, but it'll still have our personalities on it and we'll have fun doing it. And so we decided we'd do the Star Wars role-playing game because that was a Fantasy Flight game, and like it's a sister studio now. And a few podcasts into that, I get a call from the licensing department at Asmodee, quite upset with me for doing this because it's like, this is unlicensed Star Wars content, and what if they don't approve, and you're putting our license at risk? And it's like, okay, well, obviously I didn't foresee all that, so we just decided. I just at that point decided like it was very important to, to be very reserved in what I do and don't talk about because I didn't have, obviously appropriate insight into what would be okay. But now I can
start up a Star Wars role-playing game again. No, I'm just kidding.
I mean, I could because FFG would no longer be to blame because we're not affiliated. Right. I mean? Like, it wasn't that like doing a Star Wars role-playing game on a podcast was wrong. It was that like there was a relationship there, and we didn't want to do anything that could potentially put it at risk.
And you didn't want people to feel like it was official content or whatever.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, I don't know what all the arguments were. I just know that it was bad of us. And it's not like we were reverent about Star Wars or anything with the podcast and how, how we are. I'm pretty sure every episode of that was canon for the actual Star Wars lore, right? I'm pretty sure that like Isaac was a bot, and I was constantly hooked up to him because he was my dialysis machine. He was my talking dialysis machine. So not exactly like Star Wars canon. And we're just, but now we can kind of, play it loose because and we could talk about the things that are going on behind the scene because, I'm less concerned about like protecting company secrets or anything like that. Because I'm just now we're a small company and I feel like our fan base is really interested in knowing all the things that are going on behind the scene. And I think that, you have to earn your fans. And if they can relate to us and we're putting out content that they enjoy through the podcast and through our games, then I'm happy to do it.
I think it's super important. I mean, board gaming is big, but overall, like, it's a small industry, especially compared to some other ones, and being able to have, like, a personality that people resonate with, or, like, a group that people really find enjoyment in, and, like, enjoy listening to your content, and enjoy, like, supporting your games, and I mean, it's just a great way to get out the information about a thing. I mean, if somebody's heard about a game from beginning to end, then when it actually comes out, they're going to be so much more excited and so much more invested in actually playing the game. It's like, oh, I've heard about this time and time again from whatever board game media it could be, whether it's you guys talking about it or other content creators talking about the game. And they can be like, oh man, so-and-so said they had a great time with this with their family, or Jerry made this for like reading with his daughter, you know, that sort of thing. Like, makes people be like, I'm getting this Mice and Mystics game, like, I gotta play this at the table with my kids because I know the story behind it, you know? And you can't get that when it's just like, all right, here's the release date, the game comes out in 2 weeks. It might look really cool, but it doesn't have the same, like, connection, you know?
Yeah, and I think it has the appeal that, like, all those Discovery Channel shows have of, like, people going and picking out antique junk or fixing up old cars or motorcycles, where it's just, like, you know, it's interesting to see, you know, people working at their skill set and the personalities that emerge and, you know, the relationships and conflicts that emerge out of working together. And so I think that was part of the fun, too.
I seriously think that I have you guys to blame for the fact that I've pretended to be a game designer a little bit, because listening to you guys' podcast back in the day, talking about
this game, it's excellent.
Shh, we don't talk about that. But anyway, but yeah, just like listening to you guys talk about like, oh, this is how you do a prototype, and oh, this is how you play test, and oh, this is how you do this and this. Like, I don't know, just listening to people talk about that stuff gets you really excited, and you guys have no idea what kind of like passion you can bring out in people just by talking about stuff. Because I mean, they might be Dougs or listeners out there who never would even know. I mean, you'd never really have any contact with them, but they are going off and doing things because of something that may have been said on a podcast here or there, you know?
And becoming our competition. No, I think that a whole lot of people who get into hobby board games aspire to do something in the creative space around hobby board games, whether their aspirations go all the way to like, I want to make a career out of this, or it's just like, I want to do this as a hobby project. I want to, you know, build a game. So yeah, I think that was another appeal of talking about the ins and outs of it.
For sure. Do you guys like the future for Plaid Hat? Are you guys thinking about, I've heard a lot of questions like, are they going to do Kickstarters now? Is it going to be like, what does your model look like now that you guys are independent again?
There aren't any current plans for Kickstarters. I think it would be kind of a gray area contractually for me. But it's, you know, it's not an impossibility that we wouldn't. It's just nothing planned currently.
Gotcha. So when your games are announced, that people will be able to find them like on your website and pre-order it from there, that sort of thing normally, or?
Yeah, like Forgotten Waters is available for pre-order now, and we tried to, you know, we sent out a newsletter and social media tweeted and Facebooked about it. Preorders.fwcrossroads.com, and built a whole like site around that and did a discount if you pre-order, and it's still available for pre-order now. We have a promo up there if you pre-order. So we're trying to do incentives, not unlike Kickstarter, but just run the program ourselves and to kind of have and wait until the product is about to ship before we do a pre-order, you know, just doing it a couple months out, rather than relying on finances. And even then, we don't charge the card until it ships. So it's very different than a Kickstarter in that we're investing our own money and then, you know, and asking for pre-orders because they are a great indicator of interest level all the way down the chain. They help us make sure that the game doesn't fall out of print for too long, because it takes a while to get more copies here if we need to reorder. For sure. And it makes it able to, for like our most direct contacts, people who we've built relationships with, to just be sure that they're going to get a copy. You know, like Dead of Winter was a situation where it was so hot so fast that like it was hard to get a copy. Mice and Mystics was similar when it first launched. So and it's a way for people to support us directly. I'm not gonna lie, like 100% margin is a lot better than much less than that. If when you're selling to like a distributor, you're selling it for at least 60% off of what the full retail is. So that's really nice. But this time around, we are doing some things differently. Like we're trying to include retailers, give discounts to retailers for pre-ordering as well, so that way they can pass some of that on, or all of it on to to their customers.
Gotcha.
Be able to kind of match, give them the pre-order incentives, et cetera, so they can kind of match any incentives that we're doing when people pre-order in their stores.
So will you be doing more like direct distribution of the game more, or are you still going through normal distribution channels for most of the stuff?
No, you still distribute through either an Asmodee direct account or through Asmodee is now partnering up with, I think they announced it at Gamma, so I'm safe here. They're partnering with ACD.
Gotcha.
So that's how you can get it as a retailer.
That's awesome. Yeah, I for some reason you talking about Dead of Winter just reminded me of like one of my favorite situations hanging out with you guys at a convention was like we were sitting there messing around with a game, and this group of people came over and set up Dead of Winter, and they were playing a game of Dead of Winter, and they had no clue who any of you guys were. Like the whole Plaid Hat crew was there, and Emerson and everybody.
Isaac was there,
and Jerry was there, and they're playing Dead of Winter, and they started getting some, like they were struggling with the rules a teeny bit, and you're like, I can't take this anymore, and you stood up and went over there to help them out with the rules. You're like, hey, well this is how this works, and I know because I'm the publisher, and that guy over there, he's the designer. And you're like, and that's, and they're like all flipping out and everything, and they're like, oh, that's Jerry, he designed Mice and Mystics. Oh, Mice and Mystics, yeah. And they're like, oh yeah, and that's Emerson, he designed Century. Oh yeah, and Spectre Ops. Oh yeah, that's great. And there's Roy, he did nothing.
Yeah, it wasn't so much that I can't take this anymore. It was just like there was an opportunity to increase their enjoyment by getting their noses out of the rule book.
Oh, for sure.
So, but yeah, it was fun to reveal to them like, hey, the designer of this game is sitting right there. Because obviously they were fans.
I thought it was hilarious. It was definitely a ton of fun. Yeah, because they're playing the game. They had some people who had played before and some people who hadn't, so it was kind of a fun, interesting situation. It's always cool to see people enjoying your game, like from an outside perspective, I guess. Yeah. But
if I happen to be in a store and somebody picks up and starts picking up board games, like if I'm in a Barnes and Noble or whatever, like I can't help but spy on them. Like trying to get in their head. It's like, okay, well, they put that one down. Like, what were they thinking there with that one? Or like if I see somebody playing one of our games at conventions, like I always want to like nose in. At conventions, there's a higher likelihood that I'm gonna be known, so I don't nose in, but I always want to.
Would you ever like
play
one of your games and pretend ignorance or whatever, just to see what the situation is like with these people that?
Oh, I mean, if I thought it was gonna be fun to do, yeah, sure.
You're like, all right, let me sit down. Dead of Winter. Oh, you're like, oh, I'm the betrayer. No one knows. And you're like, not only am I the betrayer, I'm also the publisher.
I feel like the only places, hey, I could probably pull that off at like PAX Unplugged.
Yeah.
Right? There's a lot of open play there, but not a lot of like deep industry knowledge.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I think that's one of the really cool things about PAX. So you guys have...
I'm loving PAX Unplugged because of that. Like it's people that are excited about board games, but that don't know every board game that's ever released. So it's a lot of chance to like actually get out there and show your games to new people.
Yeah, I think it's really cool because it's like a lot of people that, I mean, they would consider themselves gamers, or maybe they're more into video games, or like the PAX crowd, but like they have some games, but they're not like I have an entire shelf of games in my house, So there's a lot of opportunity to share games with different people. And I feel like the audiences may be a little bit younger too, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, we used to go to PAX East, but PAX Unplugged is even better because it's like specifically they're showing up because they, want to be there and play board games and look at board games.
That's awesome. So you guys have Forgotten Waters coming out. Tell us a little bit about what that is. I know it's a project you guys have been working on for a while. Dun, dun, dun!
Yeah, it's this boy.
I'm excited because, I've seen it on tables in prototype form, but I don't know a whole lot about how exactly the game plays or how you go through this game.
So I was at Gamma, so I've really been trying to refine my pitch at Gamma as people were coming up to the table where I had it set up. And I've been calling it a cross between a role-playing game and a party game. Which are
crazy.
The opposite ends of the spectrum, right? But it's got the approachability of a party game. It goes up to 7 players. The writing and just the general kind of you have to cooperate, but you're also all kind of selfish interactions make it very raucous and funny and have lots of laugh out loud moments. And so it's got those features of a party game, but at the same time, you're making your character and you're doing little things to, little Mad Lib style flesh out of his background and story moments from him. You're advancing him and changing your character's skills as you go.
Nice.
And experience the world. And then, of course, it's super story heavy, so you're both experiencing a main story and then all kinds of little story moments as you explore the world, and you're making choices a la a Crossroads game, right? So there's still Crossroads moments where you end up having a thematic choice to make. So all those are very elements that we're used to seeing in role-playing games. So I feel like it makes for a really easy to present to a large group of friends kind of but story role-play type experience. So really excited about that.
So everybody plays a different pirate character on a ship, or?
Yeah, there's a whole pad of pirate characters. So it might be the survivor pirate, the orphan pirate, the assassin pirate. And then you give them a name and you fill out there'll be a Mad Lib on it.
Nice.
And then there's just places in the backstory and in the epilogue and in the story moments that happen that are specific to your pirate, where there'll be references over to the Mad Lib stuff that you filled in. So it ends up, in a fun, silly way, kind of customizing some of your stuff. So it's a lot of fun in that way. In the way that, a role-playing game is, where you can take ownership over your character.
I talk about on this podcast how my favorite games are those games that create experiences or memorable moments. There's so many games out there, and I know there's a lot of people out there that really enjoy the min-maxy Euro, moving this here, pushing that there. But the games I love are the games that you can casually play with friends and just have crazy moments, or there's moments to backstab somebody, or moments to just have crazy off the wall things happen that you'll talk about for years down the road. So I'm really excited to see what comes out of this game, because I know you guys are all about the theme.
Yeah, and that's really what we tried to do here. And this time around we employed an app. It's a web app. So what's cool about that is that we may do a native app as well later on, just for convenience. But by having a web app, you can access it through any device.
Gotcha.
And it doesn't just outdate itself the next time iOS updates. Can you hear my phone going off? I didn't silence it. I'm sorry.
I hear tappy taps or something. I don't know. But no, it's good.
There's a fiery conversation going on in the group chat. And I couldn't hear my phone going off through my earphones because it pings on my laptop every time. So I didn't realize my phone was on. Anyhow, what was I saying? Oh, yeah. So we did the app. Having it as a web app means that the next time the iOS updates, it doesn't break the app. So it's got longevity and low maintenance, so that we are able to keep it up for the very long term. Because I know a concern that people present with apps is like, well, am I going to be able to play this 15 years from now? Yes, we'll be able to keep this thing up without issue. It's made to be low maintenance. And then there are other cool things about the app. We're going to do a totally like voice acted cast. So
crazy.
If you have a theatrical group, it's fun to read your own stuff. But some people are less comfortable reading out loud, and so we've hired professional voice actors and did a whole voice acted cast. The app sends you to whatever page you're going to be in the location book. So the app is playing ambient sounds that match the location that you're in while you play. So it really creates this immersive experience. And then additionally, so like even if you're playing the same scenario and you ended up in the same location and you made the same choice, when the app calls up content, it knows if you've seen content before, and we have another layer of content behind that. And then we have another layer of content behind that. And then sometimes we have a layer of content behind that. So that way, like, there are fresh things that you're seeing for the first time, no matter how many times you've played. And
That's awesome.
Even if you played a whole lot, like there's so much content here that it would be very, very, very unlikely that anybody would be able to experience it all. And then we also have the ability to go in and add more as the game ages, new scenarios, and then more content for, just for location pages and stuff like that you might have seen.
So with the app, is it mostly going to be like the events or the things you encounter are going to be discovered through the application, or?
Yes, yeah, the application is...
It's basically like the crossword card, sort of, or...
Pretty much. Like, when you land on a tile as you're sailing around the sea, you have these special location tiles, and those are preset, and those usually have something to do with the scenario, or just generally, like, outlining different bounds of the map. And then you have... as you're sailing, these navigation tokens that come out. So you can kind of scout ahead sometimes, or you can just sail blind, and you end up with these tiles that give you hints via their pictures at what kinds of things could be there. And then if you land on one of these, you put that entry in, and you get some story. You might make a decision, and then it's going to send you to a certain page in the location book that matches with whatever's going on in the story. And then as you're playing through the location book, certain choices you make or certain roles you get will send you over to the app to put in an entry. But it's all just like there's an entry field. You type it in. It calls up some story. Does some voice acting if you want it. It helps with setup to some things like that. But, yeah, for the most part, it's just where a bunch of the story lives. And it let us do just – and way more story than we've ever been able to plug into anything. Like, we put way more hours into this than we've ever put into anything before. Yeah. And we're still able to make the game $60, $59.95, even though it's got all that story. Because we use the app to store it, we're not having to print a multiple books full of pages, with all this stuff written out.
That's awesome. I'm a huge fan of like technology in games. Like, I really enjoy games that do it, and the opportunities that like utilizing stuff properly can create is really crazy, because there's so much stuff you can do with it. I mean, you can make the app so it knows what's going on here, what's going on there, and then also like the amount of like, if you're doing it like with decks of cards or something crazy, it'd be insane. Like, it's like, okay, well, if you chose this situation, it's got to pull this card out of this deck and put it into that deck, sort of thing. And the fact that an app can not only do that, but can also be updated a long time, or you can just create more content as the game progresses without actually having to send out like FAQ updates or anything like that,
Right. Yep. And we can obviously we put a lot of playtesting in this. As I said, we spent more time on this than anything before. But having so much of that content and direction in the app also lets us, potentially balance through the app if people are having a real tough time completing a scenario or finding a scenario too easy. If somebody's confused about an entry, there'll be a space where they can report it and ask a question. We can go in and make the entry more clear. So, yeah, there are a lot of advantages to using an app. I think when apps first started getting used in games, if like there were some examples that I really didn't like because it felt like you could like the cardboard was unnecessary. Like basically the whole thing was happening with the app. They weren't really supplementing one another. But this is a situation where I feel like it's a real true integration rather than just rather than just like the cardboard's tacked on or the app's tacked on. They both work together to make a better experience.
Gotcha. So what is like the end goal of the game? Is there a certain thing you're like trying to do, or is that just all hidden in mystery? Like you don't know exactly like how long do the games generally go, or do you just keep going and going? Or
it's not a campaign. There is one of the scenarios that we suggest you play first because it does a good job of setting up the world. Because it's like a fantastical world, but it doesn't start that way,
Gotcha.
and that's what happens in the first scenario. But it's dependent on the scenario as far as where things are headed, where the story is going to climax. Each scenario has a save point halfway through. So we say the game is 2 to 4 hours, but in reality it's, up to 2 hours if you just play the first half, and then up to 4 hours if you play all the way through a scenario in one setting.
That's crazy. So there's like tons of gameplay in this.
Yeah, because each scenario is also very replayable, and each scenario has 2 parts that you can play separately.
Gotcha. So you guys are going to continue working to make all sorts of different things in with Plaid Hat. Are there other things that you guys are going to be moving forward? I know Jerry made like a heartfelt post about leaving his friends behind and things like that. Is there anything we can continue to look forward for other Plaid Hat offerings?
Yeah, I mean, well, we may have lost, Jerry's past games. We still have Jerry, so we have Jerry's future, and he's working on, the next Jerry game, which means it's going to be adventurous, and it's going to be story heavy, and it's going to be charming, and he's got a really great idea that I don't want to reveal yet.
Oh, for sure.
But he's already started working on it. We're starting to get art back on it. We've got a sculptor hired. It's really going to be something special. We're trying to make it so that it is, a story-centric game, and that it has 2 tiers. So we want to do this dice card hybrid system, and then when you're playing with just kids, there's just a rule set where you can just take the cards out and you just use dice. So like you use more dice, but and there's a flip to each of the cards for like HeroScape back in the day that had basic and advanced, except the basic version's going to work. And so that just like Stuffed Fables was really popular for people to play with their kids, there'll be the opportunity to do that, but it'll be, we'll have a crunchier system. Instead of trying to ride the line between like what can kids do but adults enjoy, we can really be like what's going to be crunchy and engaging for adults, and what's going to be easy to manage for kids, and put them both in the same game, so that way it can attract both crowds.
I think that's an awesome idea. I've played a lot of games with my kids that I kind of like I just kind of make a slimmed down or like simplified version. It's like, okay, we're going to play this game, but like even when they were super small, like Rhino Hero with just a stacking game, like they can't really play it competitively very well. So I'd be like, okay, we're just going to stack the cards together cooperatively, and I'm going to place the cards out. You guys are going to move the little rhino, and we're going to see how high we can get. Just tweaking games to make them easier for kids. And then I'm sure as like kids grow older, or if you have older kids, they might be able to enjoy the crunchier or more advanced version as well. That's really cool.
Yeah, or when you're playing with adults, it's going to be a dramatic story, not unlike a Pixar movie. It can be enjoyed by adults.
That's awesome.
So yeah, we're really we're really pulling out all the stops on that, and really excited about that. Of course, you already mentioned that working on Summoner Wars. Beyond that, not sure. We got to see how Forgotten Waters does. Forgotten Waters does real well, and the system is really praised. Would love to do, more, themes and stories in this system if it's working. Maybe Forgotten Heroes and have it be a superhero game, or Forgotten Lands and have it be a fantasy game.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see what you guys have come up with. I just enjoy. I know some people think it's more of an activity than a game, but I've enjoyed games like Tales of the Arabian Nights, where you're just going through a book and there's like not a whole lot of game there, but just seeing the crazy stories that can unravel from some of these games are really cool. So it'll be really cool to see how this story party-ish game works for you guys with the role-playing elements as well.
There's definitely more game there than there is in Tales of Arabian Nights, and you do feel more like you have control and are making decisions and affecting the game based on your decisions. It's less random in that way than, say, a Tales or a Betrayal at the House on the Hill. But just like a Betrayal at the House on the Hill, like it feels its theme, and and it's a lot of fun in that way. So yeah. I think that, but I do think it will do really well amongst the crowd that likes those games.
Gotcha. So when you're revving up Summoner Wars, do you know what kind of, have you thought about like what sort of release model you might do for the game? I know you had like some 2-player starter sets that you started the game off with, and then like did a bunch of different packs and then some like master sets and stuff like that. Are you working towards making another master set, or are you going to start smaller and then bring it out from there?
The starter sets were pretty universally panned because nobody liked the paper mats.
Well, you don't have to go back to paper necessarily.
Well, I don't know how I'm going to fit it in a small box with only 2 decks and then, have you pay for a full board. You know what I mean? Yeah. You have to have more of a premium offering. So I think we'll start with a master set, and that'll be the entryway into the game, rather than having multiple entryways. And then from there, it'll be all faction decks. Reinforcement decks are not a thing that will happen because deck building is going to change in a way that that eliminates the need for something like that. So each new pack will be a new faction ready to play deck, but there will be the ability to cross build certain cards with certain other decks. Like the plan is to have, I'll just go out with it. The plan is to have each summoner has 3 build symbols, so they all have a martial build symbol, which is like their martial prowess, and that is common to every summoner. So any martial cards, so these are going to be mercenaries, and then kind of event be that are more like tactical in nature, will be these martial cards that can be built into any deck. And then, so for example, then the Tundra Orcs, well, they'll have martial, then they'll have water, and they'll have primal, and those are it's 3 build types. So, the polar dwarves are going to be water and engineering. So the polar dwarves will be able to build stuff from the Tundra Orcs because they all have, those 3 symbols on, or each one of the units in those cards will have water and I'm getting lost here, but each one of the Tundra Orc commons and champions will have water primal. So
gotcha.
And you only have to match your card only has to have at least one symbol matching at least one symbol on the summoner you're building it into.
Oh, crazy.
So there'll be plenty of mix and match. So then the cave goblins will be primal and trickster. So the cave goblins can be built in with the Tundra Orcs, and the Tundra Orcs and the polar dwarves can be built in together. And so in that way, it'll have all this, limited but not so limited as the first edition deck building, and the deck building still be thematic in that, like, oh, these people, it makes sense that they're together because both of them are good at water/ice magic, or they're both very primal factions, etc.
The real question is, how long do we have to wait for Shadow Elves? Okay, maybe that's just my question, because I like Shadow Elves. I like assassins! Jump across the board and kill the summoner. That's the rule.
I'd have to look at like my current release plan schedule.
Oh, wow.
They might be in the first set. I'll call it up if you want me to.
That's pretty hardcore. I didn't I guess you're pretty far along if you're like, okay, well, this is going to be here, that's going to be there. That's pretty awesome. I'm really excited.
Shadow Elves are not in the first set. And no,
I guess that means I'm going to have to buy the first set and more. So, there's that.
Oh boy. It's not looking good for your Shadow Elves.
Did the Shadow Elves get themselves assassinated?
Looks like the Shadow Elves are in Wave 7, so you're going to have to hold on for a while.
Oh, no. I'll stick around. I'll stick around long enough to make it happen,
So each wave will then have 2 decks that releases, and I'm not sure on the timing of how often those will come out. Mm-hmm. But a master set of 6 factions, and then 2 new factions ad infinitum. I've got, looks like 10 different waves currently planned.
Oh, wow.
I don't have all the cards built for all those waves, but I do have quite a few decks built, like 10 of them so far.
Mm-hmm. One of the things I used to love about Summoner Wars was the fact that you could just take any of the base decks and just throw it on the table, and you basically had a chance against any of the other base decks.
Right.
Which I thought was always a blast.
We're still looking to balance everything in that way. So there will be two balancing efforts. One will be like, is every deck competitive against every deck right out of the box? And the other is like, is the deck building also balanced? Like, make sure that there aren't things that combo to just like totally break the game, or a card that needs to be in every deck because it's just too competitive, etc.
That's awesome. Have you had a ton of your like old school playtesters be like, I'm coming back in for this?
Yeah, a lot of like the top level players and old playtesters have been reaching out. I've started a newsletter list where I've just been plugging their emails in. Like, I'll let you know when the playtesting starts. I'll let you know when the playtesting starts, because right now we're trying to build a way for playtesters to play each other online.
That's awesome.
Just a simple tool set to assist them in doing that, because I think that's going. We did that with Vassal before, not Tom Vassal, the like game
They're spelled
engine
differently,
thing.
I think.
And that really helped to have like the top level competitive players playing each other. And
now there's things like Tabletop Simulator and stuff like that does a good job of that sort of thing as well. Yeah,
we're looking into a coder utility called boardgames.io, because we brought on a coder full time, Joe Ellis, who's been part of Plaid Hat for a very long time. So he's looking into that right now. So, but Tabletop Simulator might be a place we go with it. We'll have something that is a good utility for playtesting online.
That's awesome. I'm definitely super excited. I heard you speak on another podcast about like minimum viable audience, and maybe like looking at like subscription model type stuff, maybe, or is it still so like I just said wave 10, so my thought is like a subscription model might be a good way to measure how many people are interested in this game, which reduces risk of a reprint as a game starts to, because as the game matures, more and more stuff releases for it, and there's a certain crowd that loves when new stuff releases for it, because this is their game, and they like to check out the new stuff, and they like to play with the deck building and all that. So you want to be able to maintain the game for that crowd, and continue to release content at a pace that works for them. But at the same time, the more stuff you put out, the more intimidating getting into the game looks. There's like, oh, well, Jesus, there's all these things out for the game. There's just no way I can
there's no way I can like ever catch up or ever skill wise or, you know, owning the content wise. So, you know, trying to figure out what's the best route to go with that, as far as like at what point is it worth it to do the art, do all the design, do all the play testing, and then print the game and still, you know, make a little bit of profit. Like, what's that number? I don't know how low that number can go. Like, digital printing may come in as another way to make the number potentially smaller. I don't know. I just think that it's a real fan service to keep a game they love alive.
Oh, for sure.
And you know, and healthy. So I'd love to be able to do it longer. I mean, there's still people who are just dying for more Ashes stuff, right? So how do we make that for them?
I just love the idea of one of those Summoner Wars packs coming in the mail, like every month or like every other month or something like that, and being like, oh, here's the new Summoner, here it is, let's play against you, let's try out this new, I don't know, just the fact of like it just automatically showing up. I don't know. Yeah. I mean, so many people do those like subscription services these days for all sorts of different stuff, whether it be like all sorts of exotic foods or snacks or different things like that. Everybody has their Netflix account that once you're signed up for it, I mean, you still think about it, but it's like it doesn't hurt as bad when you've already kind of budgeted that expense. And I'm sure as a publisher, that could be great for you guys. It's like, we have this audience, they want the game, and there's more people signing up for that, and you can kind of gauge like how big that is, you know, so you know how many to print for the next one.
Yeah, part of the reason why the waves contain 2 decks is because I haven't done all the math yet, so none of these are promises, but
right.
My idea is, well, at 2 decks, we might be able to just ship them for free to subscribers. So, like, they're paying the price of the, you know, expansion, but they're not paying any shipping. Probably the U.S. only. Well, almost definitely the U.S. only. They're not having to pay any kind of shipping fee. And by having 2 decks, that lets us do that. I also think that the subscription service would be a great way to be able to update older cards. So, like, if we're doing a new print run and a card is under or overused and we want to tweak it, we can tweak it in the new print run, and then also have extra copies of the tweaked cards and just send them out to all the subscribers with their next shipment.
Wow. And that would be crazy.
And you know, goodies and, you know, holiday goodies and whatever else that we can do as part of subscription service, and just having like a critical mass of subscribers would let us do, you know, potentially all sorts of things. Like, you know, maybe if there's enough of them, it turns into, you know, being able to do an online version where players can play each other, you know, that enforces the rules and everything. And if you have a subscription, you just automatically have access to all the decks on the online version. Or, you know, I want to do organized play stuff that is good at reaching out directly to the consumer. And, you know, in the past, there's always been this, like, you have to try to get the retailer's attention. Meanwhile, they've got so many companies doing that.
Oh, right.
In order to get, like, an organized play kit to the actual people who want to organize a game. Not to mention that not all games happen at game stores. You know, they happen at conventions. They happen, well, you know,
at a library. You know, who knows? At
a library, at a school, at you know, somebody's home that's invited a bunch of people over to do a tournament.
That's awesome. So as far as the game goes, do you foresee, is there going to be a lot more mechanical changes to Summoner Wars besides like the deck building stuff you spoke about already? Or is it just going to be Is it going to be very similar, or have you gone and rehauled a lot of stuff? I mean, this is going to be a second edition. What can we look forward to as far as that sort of stuff goes?
There's definitely going to be changes at high-level competitive plays. When you'd have two really good players playing each other, they would get to the point where like neither of them wanted to do anything, and that was their best move, and it would lead to stalemates or just kind of games of chicken, and it wasn't really satisfying. It wasn't what was intended. So, done things to get rid of the inevitability problem. I can't say what's going to make it to the final game. I could say what's working right now. You draw 3 cards every turn, no matter what. And then you have to discard down to 7.
That's huge.
You have to discard down to 7 if you go over a hand limit of 7. And you can still build Magic, and build Magic is right before draw, so you'll never really be above 7 and have to discard down because you'll just have built them the phase before.
Oh man, now I have to rethink all my strategy. So my strategy was always just like build everything and then build champions. Now I'm just going to have to rethink because I'm not going to be able to draw back up the full 3 or the full 5 or whatever every time if I'm only getting 3 cards. My whole world has been shattered. I'm going to have to rethink all my Summoner War strategies.
And then if your deck runs out, then you start taking a wound on your summoner every round during your draw phase. Yeah, so obviously somebody's going to have the upper hand in that equation.
Well, that can really lead to a lot quicker games, I would think, too, if the decks are still the same relative size.
Games have been going about the same length for us, but yeah, I mean, it's going to keep away from like stalemate type of really drug out games for sure. A game can't drag out kind of indefinitely as was possible previously. It didn't happen often and really only at high level play, but
you would never want your opponent to have
make sure the game's great for everybody.
You never want your opponent to have the first roll if you didn't have a chance to. It's like, no, you have to come to me, and I could see how that could happen.
So if your summoner has more life, you might have an edge there in the long game. Going first is definitely not. Going first has its advantages, but it also has the drawback of being first to the wound on your summoner because all decks are the same size. So some really interesting things there. You can still kill your own units, but you don't get any magic for them. So there will be decks that still might have reasons to kill their own units, but it won't be that like, the noble vanguards walk onto the field and start by having their summoners shoot down her own defenders, for magic. Like that was something that would happen at high level play. And so that's no longer in there. You start the game with magic. You no longer use your cards to track magic. There'll be a little token or whatever.
Crazy.
It's still like the economy is like a card for magic. You still can build a card to get a magic.
But that leaves for more interesting things, because certain things would be like, okay, I built this as magic, but I need to play it from my discard pile, so I have to spend this to get it into my discard pile so I can play. Exactly. It allows for different design opportunities, I guess.
So now, whenever a card is destroyed or discarded, it goes into its owner's discard pile, which suddenly makes the Fallen Kingdom a lot more fun and cool.
Right.
Because they were to have like raise the dead out of their discard pile, and you have to do all this like pre-planning that was, it was strategic in a way, but was mostly just kind of obtuse. Those are small. There's now only 4 phases to get everything done. There's an action phase that kind of encapsulates movement and attack. So in your action phase, you can activate 4 units one at a time, and when a unit activates, it can move up to 2 spaces, and then it can attack. And so, like, by being able to do 4, by only drawing 3 cards at a time, potentially a whole 5, and by having some commons, more, beefier common choices available to you, it has made it so that you don't just see like very few commons ever hit the field and people are just trying to get their champions out. Like there's the plan is to have definitely viable strategies both ways. Commons are great to play and champions are great to play. And how you roll it out and your pacing on that, it will be important.
I'm super excited. Summoner Wars has been one of my favorite games for a long time. I know is extremely high in both me and Tom's top 100 that we recently did, and the game, you guys haven't had anything come out for Summoner Wars in a long time. I feel like that just shows how excited and how much that game made an impact on our like gaming tastes and like what we enjoy. So I'm super excited to see more Summoner Wars coming down.
I'm aiming for that number 1 spot. Second edition.
Make it happen. Make it happen. That's awesome, man. Well, we have hit an hour, so I guess we can start to wrap this thing up. I know you have a lot of exciting things for people to look at, so if people want to know about where to find out more about Plaid Hat Games, where to find your podcast, where to look up new games coming out, where to find Forgotten Waters, where can they find all that stuff?
You can always go to plaidhatgames.com and check out what's going on there. We post updates there. You can follow us on Facebook. You can follow us on Twitter. We keep those up to date. You can sign up for our newsletter at plaidhatgames.com. You can find the pre-order site for Forgotten Waters at plaidhatgames.com. Or you can go directly there at preorder.fwcrossroads.com. Did I miss anything? No. Those are the ways you keep in touch with us. The Plaid Hat podcast, subscribing to that. When that goes up, when the feed goes up, you'll be able to find that at plaidhatgames.com.
And make sure to harass Nikki on social media on @PlaidHat at all the Twitter stuff.
Yep. Nikki is out there killing it on the social media.
Sweet. Awesome, man. Well, it's been so
She's fun to interact with.
Yeah, and if you ever have any pictures of a Plaid Hat thing, post it, and it pretty much gets reposted. So it's fun. Awesome. Well, thanks so much for coming on the show. If anybody wants to check out more Spaces Between, make sure to check it out on iTunes. Just search for Spaces Between. Also, these go up on the Dice Tower every Monday at 5 p.m. Thanks, Colby, so much for joining me, and we'll see everyone on the next one.
Thank you so much for having me.
Peace.
Bye.
Thanks so much for watching another Dice Tower video. If you enjoy our videos, subscribe to the channel for more fun, comprehensive board game coverage. Also, consider joining us at one of our events. Come to Dice Tower Retreat, a small, intimate gathering where gaming is king. Join us for Dice Tower Cruise, the largest board game cruise. Attend Dice Tower West in Las Vegas for gaming fun on the West Coast, or Dice Tower East in Orlando in sunny Florida. Dice Tower Conventions, the friendliest gaming conventions on Earth. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower.